Hello, Tansei, Anine, good afternoon, and welcome to APTN InFocus. I'm Daryl Stranger. Today we're putting Indigenous comedy in focus. I hope everyone is ready to smile and laugh because today's show should be hilarious. So, of course, we want you to join in on our conversation today. You can tweet us at APTN InFocus, or you can send us an email at APTN, or InFocus, at aptn.ca. I got to make sure I get that right. So let's not bore you with my talk any longer. I mean, it's only been a few seconds, but let's get right into it. Our first guest joining us this afternoon is here with us in studio, Stephanie Pangowish. But before we speak with her, let's take a little bit of a look at her work.
When I first started beading, I started beading with my friends on the weekends. And then I started beading during the week, alone. I was starting to bead like days on days, not showering. I was meeting people in dark alleyways, selling my beadwork just to buy more beads. I started buying them by the kilo. Started selling them in grams.
Well, Stephanie, it's great for you to be here in studio. That little clip, I mean, I'm sure everybody at home was laughing just like I was during that clip. So it's great to be able to speak with you. We love that you're here in studio. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I'll start simple, and then I'll just ask you before we get into some of your work and your material. How did you get started in comedies? Where did
where did it all begin?
Yeah, where did it all begin?
I was about 6 years old when I realized that I can get out of a spanking from my mom by making her laugh. So I was like, oh, this is some good stuff I got going on here. So around 8 years old, I saw my first stand-up comedian while I was watching one of the only 2 channels on the res with my mom, and I was like, what's that person doing? She's like, that's a stand-up comedian. I was like, I want to do that. She looks at me, she's like, no. You're going to go to school. So she crushed my little heart, but that kept me going, and I've always had the ability to make people laugh. And so when I got to Toronto, I ended up meeting some people over there, and we got this Indigenous women's comedy group started. We did this class and learned how to write and perform, and then we started an Indigenous women's comedy collective, and it's been going ever since.
Wow, that's quite the story. So when did it sort of become a reality for you that, hey, I can make a career out of this? When did that sort of set in for you?
Right before the pandemic. So when I was starting to become a little bit more serious about it,
right.
And so I was like, okay, I had all these shows lined up, probably had about good 5 or 6 like in this 1 month, and then the pandemic hit and everything just canceled. And I was like, oh gosh, I was like, I guess I should try the whole Zoom thing.
Right.
Yeah, and that was a little tough.
Well, yeah, how with the pandemic, how much of an impact did that have on comedy? I mean, comedy is such a, an interactive thing, especially with the audience when you're doing stand-up. So how big of an impact was that?
Oh, it was so tough. Like being able to try and, hoping that you land these jokes, and then not hearing the response because everybody's on mute.
Yeah.
And you just have to imagine in your mind that you're the funniest person in this world. You just got to keep going without hearing the laughter. Yeah, it was pretty rough, but we got through it.
Well, yeah, I got through it indeed, and this might seem like a sort of an odd question, but do you have a style of comedy or like a genre or your material? Like if you do have a style, sort of, what is your style when it comes to comedy?
It's a deadly anti-style.
Yeah.
No, I feel like all my comedy is surrounded around our culture. It's surrounded about things that we experience as Indigenous people. It's things that I experience as an Indigenous woman. So I talk about all kinds of things like policy, healthy sexuality, being positive and supportive in our community, inclusive, everything what it means to be like that auntie in our communities. That's kind of how my comedy is.
Well, you mentioned Deadly Aunties. I want to get into that a little bit. Can you explain what Deadly Aunties is and who the Deadly Aunties are?
So the Deadly Aunties is these 3 powerhouses of Sherry McKay, Cheyenne Sapp, and myself. And all three of us are just like focused on our community, and we really want to build our community through humor. And so what we do is we provide shows, to our Indigenous communities, whether it's on the res or in the city. And then we give support to people who want to try out stand-up comedy. So all the new people, we invite them with us, we'll help them write, things like that, just to kind of make that available to people who wouldn't otherwise have that opportunity to be able to perform in front of an all Indigenous or mostly Indigenous audience.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure those comedians also love, getting a chance to do that work.
And we also did some fundraising for a couple of our shows. Like we gave back to a couple of Indigenous grassroots youth groups. Yeah,
Amazing.
one here, Initiative.
Oh, yeah.
We fundraised for them, and then back home in Ontario, we fundraised for another one.
Oh, that's amazing to hear. Well, kind of on that same topic, I mean, there's many Indigenous comedians, and there's now an Indigenous comedy tour with Got Land that's started up, and that's been picking up steam over the last few years. But how important is it that there's more Indigenous people in the comedy scene as opposed to maybe even 5 or 10 years ago? It seems like it's just sort of on the up and up right now when it comes to Indigenous comedians, but a few years ago, they were few and far between. So how important is it that there are more Indigenous comedians now?
It's very important. Comedy is, being a comedian, you have to go through so many processes in order to get to that level of being able to perform on stage. And to be able to be basically, it's almost like being naked in front of everybody, because you're exposing yourself, like everything what you believe in, things that you find funny. And sometimes not a lot of people are gonna find it funny, but you got to keep going, and there's so many things that you learn along the way to be able to get to that part, and it's strengthening, it's empowering, it's powerful to be able to do that. See, we all do that with each other in our communities, like one-to-one with our cousins or aunties, uncles and stuff, but to be able to do that on stage, that's just like, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it, about watching people grow and to be able to get to that point. So that's the only difference between me and our community, is we all joke around with each other, and I just do it on stage. Yeah. Well,
you mentioned a lot of it is growing, with the community and with yourself. So how much have you grown from when you started to now? Have you seen that growth in yourself?
Wow, I've seen so much growth. Before I even started, it was hard for me to even tell a story to somebody. Really? Yeah, and once I believed in myself that I could do stand-up comedy, and I did it for the first time, it was the best feeling in the world. I was literally happy for 3 days. Like, nothing could tear me down. Yeah. And I kept that feeling, and I was like, wow, it was kind of like a runner's high. Yeah, you know? Yeah. And so if I experience that, like, I can only imagine what other new comedians experience, when they're able to achieve a goal like that. But to be able to get to that point, I had to do a lot of self-reflecting, think about things that I've had to let go in order to find things funny, to be able to laugh about certain situations that I've experienced in life. Right. And now I just make fun of the stresses in my life, and my life is way more easier to live being able to laugh like that, and I think that that's one of our superpowers.
It really is, yeah. That's people. A great way to put that. Yeah. And, if there was a young up-and-coming comedian, or they're thinking about getting into comedy, what would you say to them? And maybe they're like, oh, I'm up in my remote community, and nobody's going to find me, or something like that. What would you say to somebody who wants to maybe get into the comedy scene?
I would say, just do it, right? Sit there, perform in front of your family and friends. Do it on TikTok, YouTube, whatever. I just post things on Facebook because I'm old. But just, get out there and talk to other comedians, because a lot of us that are out there, a lot of us Indigenous comedians, we're supporting each other. And that's what we want to see, is we want to see everybody grow together. So that's how I think they should do, reach out to me or Sherry, Shy, other comedians you see us working with. Yeah, just reach out.
Well, I mentioned the Deadly Aunties, and you talked about that a little earlier. So what do you have coming up sort of in the next few weeks and months here that you're able to share with our audience and that they can look forward to as well?
Oh, we have so many things coming up. So this weekend, we're doing the Deadly Aunties is going to be performing with Paul. I'm going to say Paul R. because I can't pronounce his last name.
It's a tough last name, yeah.
So Sean Cuthand, there's going to be a couple other comedians on there. And it's called Kimooch. So we're going to be performing this weekend, but it's already sold out. So unfortunately, we won't have extra tickets. But next month, the Deadly Aunties will be having a fundraiser on May 20th, and that'll be helping to support our tour across Canada. So we have July already set for Ontario, and then we're going to start making our way westbound after that.
So the tour is going to be sort of Ontario and then making the way west, and you guys are just going to be, we had talked off camera, you're going to have a car and maybe deck it out a little bit?
Well, Sherry's going to buy a vehicle. We're going to get it pink and leopard print, and they're going to hear us laughing all the way down to Prairies.
So what's the tour going to be like? Like this is your first time of doing sort of an actual tour. What's that going to be like for you? What do you, any expectations for it?
Expectations? Well, the planning and everything is coming along very well. Like, I've hired an assistant, so I'm teaching her how to like work with us, you know, with our communities and things like that, because she's more focused in the urban settings. So I'm teaching her how to like help plan and coordinate, and to be able to do like both reserves and the cities, because you know we don't want to leave out anybody. We want to be able to show our humor and be able to give those opportunities to everybody as much as we can.
And what's your favorite part of comedy? Like, since you've started doing it, what's your absolute favorite part? What keeps you going?
Landing that punchline. Landing that punchline and getting the roar in the crowd. That's the best feeling for me. That's just like, you know, in here. And I was like, yes, I did it. I did it again.
you keep doing it, and you keep landing those. So, I wish we had more time, but it's you know, that's the thing with TV. Unfortunately, it's kind of a set time. But I guess with comedy, it's a little bit like that too. But
for sure.
Thank you so much for coming in. Like, I really appreciate it. We really appreciate it. I know our audience probably does as well. But yeah, I mean, it's been such a pleasure talking with you. You're just so engaging and just fun to be around, so I get, you know, the audience aspect of that too. So
awesome.
Thank you so much for coming, and really appreciate it. And best of luck this summer with the tour, and we'll have to come by if you're ever. I'm hoping you're swinging by Winnipeg and some of the other communities. So
maybe I can do a set on APTN.
Maybe you could, maybe we can talk about that for sure after. But
it'll have to be a clean one.
It will, unfortunately, have to be a clean one. But we would love to have you in anytime, Stephanie. So thank you so much again for coming in.
You betcha.
All right, we do have to step aside for a short break, but still ahead, we'll head online and see what you are all saying about Indigenous comedy.
Join our conversation now. Like us on Facebook on our APTN News page, follow or tweet us at APTN InFocus, and send your thoughts to infocus@aptn.ca.
Welcome back to APTN in Focus. The Got Land comedy show is relatively new on the comedy tour, but the all-Indigenous show is quickly picking up traction in the comedy scene. Dennis Ward filled in for me and spoke with two comedians from the Got Land show.
I get asked questions. They're always really silly and mostly about my status card. It's plastic. It's plastic, Derek. But here, let me clear up some misconceptions right here today on this stage. Yes, I do get free education as long as I keep a GPA over 3.2. And yes, I do pay taxes, but just a small one, just a small one. But the best part of having a status card is I get to hunt and fish wherever I want. So I was in Loblaws the other day and I dropped my line in the fish tank. I'm a security guard by profession, so I walked myself out.
Lena, Janelle, thanks to you both for joining us today.
Hey, Gregoire, thank you so much for having us.
Janelle, let's start with you, Janelle. You got started, Got Land just a few years ago. Well, what led you to creating Got Land?
Well, I really like milk. No, actually, Here in Ottawa, Ontario, I started a little open mic called Comedy at Eddie's, and I did a lot of theme shows, but I noticed that there was a theme in Ottawa that there wasn't a lot of space for Indigenous comedians. It was always one comedian or the other, like the great Don Kelly or Jen Hayward, and none of us were on the same show. So I'm like, but there's a lot more Indigenous comedians here in Ottawa, so what I did was I just brought us all together. Let's have our own show. I'm like, what should we call it? Some had these long, convoluted names, but I was like, we need something short like Gotland. And they're like, Janelle, you got it. And Gotland was born September, I believe, 19th, 2019. Yes, we're still in our infancy. So Gotland was born, and we finally had a space for our community.
Awesome stuff. Lena, when you first heard about Gotland, what were your thoughts?
I was like, this is amazing. I seen the website that Janelle had up, and I seen comedians' bios and headshots, and I was thinking to myself, how do I get involved?
Lena, what other options were out there for you previously?
Well, I just finished being a full-time teacher. I think I was still teaching. I can't remember because we were online at the time. It was during the pandemic. Mm-hmm. It was during the, we're getting out of pandemic. It was just like, I felt like I was just, I was doing comedy, but I was kind of just transitioning out from full-time work, going back into being a full-time artist. I didn't see anything like this, like what Janelle had. I am part of like a couple of collectives, but a lot of us were like working our day jobs, and, you know, a lot of us moved from the city. So like, I just was trying to get connected. And this, when it comes to options of getting connected to who are the other Indigenous comedians outside of Toronto, like this was it.
Right. Janelle, how much has Gotland grown since its inception?
It's grown immensely. I remember it was only going to be a one-off show on September 19th at Little Eddie's Diner, but everybody came up to me afterwards, when's the next one? When's the next one? And then I was like, okay, let's do a next one. And we blossomed to the universities, the colleges. During the pandemic, we'd never stopped. We transitioned to Zoom, and we did Solstice and other government agencies who wanted to see Indigenous comedy. So right now, we're blossoming more than ever. We finally got Just for Laughs last year. That was amazing. 2 shows in Toronto at the Royal Cinema Theatre, and I guess next month we're headed to the Winnipeg Comedy Festival. So we're finally blossoming and blooming and getting Indigenous comedy across Turtle Island, and that's all we ever wanted.
Awesome stuff. We'll have to keep an eye out for the Winnipeg Comedy Festival. Lena, can you tell us a bit about the, teaching and comedy and the transition, or is teaching just pretty funny stuff?
Yeah, well, I was doing comedy after work because it was something I was able to do. And I found that bringing comedy into the classroom helped me as a teacher. I was teaching high school, and sometimes, comic relief really works sometimes. Mm-hmm. Or I felt like teaching, I was able to practice. Like I was constantly in a state of reading a room, right? But then the pandemic hit and everything was on Zoom, and that was different. I felt disconnected in so many ways. But then I also realized, you know what? I want to go back to being a full-time artist, because I only did teaching for like 6 years of my life. And I wanted to stick with comedy. And the transition into it, the first performance I did before Gotland was in a park in my neighborhood. And there was these comedians that were like just set up even with like, yeah, they just set up in the park and they were like, yeah, we're doing comedy in the park. So I put my name in the list and I was like, oh my God, this feels so good. This is the first time I performed live since the pandemic. And that's when I sought out, like how to get into comedy again. And that's how I found Got Land. I was scrolling online. I think Janelle just did something here in Toronto, and that's how I found out about Janelle. And I was like, wow, I just, my heart was just pulled towards comedy, and I don't know how to describe the transition or like the teaching or the connection. It's just like, I feel like I could also educate through comedy, where it's a little bit, I also did slam poetry before, and I used to educate through poetry. I find it's a little bit, like I could address some things without, while making it a little bit more light. Right. Let's just put it that way. When I used to do slam poetry, it was pretty hard hitting, pretty heavy, and I like that comedy is a little bit light, it's fun, it's real, it's true, and it's just like something we could all relate to. It's just life,
Yeah.
And the class clown is the teacher, and the teacher's now a comic, eh?
I certainly always liked my teachers that had a sense of humor more than the grumpy ones. Janelle, I guess if you look back to even just a couple of years ago, are we seeing more Indigenous comedians and shows?
More than ever. Oh, hole. We have so many comedians across Turtle Island. Even on my roster, we have almost 40 comedians across Turtle Island, but there's more than that. Just for Laughs is doing a showcase tour across Turtle Island right now, and there's lots of Indigenous comedy shows popping up for talent to come into the Canadian entertainment industry. So there's aspiring, there's amateurs, there's pros, and there's tons of them, and I want to meet them all because I feel every Indigenous comedian is a Gotland comedian, and I can't wait to meet them.
Do you think maybe that they were always out there like Lena? They just needed, the space to perform and to put on their shows?
100%. That's what we were hungry for. Our community here in Ottawa and across is hungry for a space for us to tell the jokes, because we're doing Indigenous comedy, or comedy that is somewhat Indigenous to all Caucasian audiences. And sometimes those audiences don't understand our humor. So having a space for us, for our community to understand our jokes is prevalent. But I do understand that we also need to bring our comedy to those Caucasian audiences as well, so they can know we're still here, we got something to say, and we're gonna make you laugh with us and not at us. So that's one of my biggest goals.
Absolutely. Lena, what does it mean for you and your fellow comedians to now have venues that you can go to and stuff like that? You're not just out in the park.
Well, it's exciting. It's good. It's good that there's, I don't want to say a home base, but like that there's something like Got Land. Because like I said, like here in Toronto before the pandemic, I wasn't just doing it in the park, but I was part of a collective, but like when we had Comedy Bar at the time, but we had to be like all together, and we had to all have time for it, and we had to set it up. Like it was a lot of organizing, but because everybody's lives kind of like took over, we couldn't like always host at that venue in Toronto every month. We kind of like dissipated. Sorry, could you repeat the question? I totally trailed off and forgot. But
just what it's like to actually have these venues. Not that you look like a crazy lady out in the park telling comedy, but to have space now.
Oh yes, okay, yes, yeah. So I feel it's more expansive, and it's more. I guess it feels like the way it should be. Let's just say that, it feels like the way it should be. Like if people want to come and go, and that's what I really respect about what Janelle has put together here, because people could come and go and live their lives, and like if they're available, they're available. If they're not, they're not. It's not in one venue. Like it's like different venues, different times, different bookings, and and people could find comedians, like I just find it more exciting. And fun and less pressure if life gets busy, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I hope that was okay to say, but like, yeah, it's like sometimes other things take over, right? I don't know how many comedians right now are full-time comedians. I mean, Janelle is, and Don Kelly, is he a full-time comedian?
Yeah.
Like there are some full-time comedians, but when you're in that beginning stage and you're just starting off, it makes it a little bit more realistic of a goal. Let's just put it that way. When you have a space like Gotland Comedy, like that, if you're not like if you're in a transition and not doing it totally full time yet, because you know that if you can't do it, somebody else might be available. You know what I mean?
Right. Yes. Janelle, what's your favorite thing about doing comedy?
The validation I never got as a child. No, the best thing I love about stand-up comedy is making people laugh. And that's our first and foremost goal, is to make people laugh. And making people laugh just brings a glimmer into my heart and my soul, like making a child laugh, because comedy is my baby. And I'm 100% in. This is the thing that changed my life for the better. And working with amazing comedians like Lena and all the comedians of Gotland, it's just a camaraderie that we've needed in comedy for a long time. And just changing the way people see or how comedy is done is also something I strive to as well, being the change you want to see. I know that's not my quote, but it is a quote I live by.
Awesome stuff. Lena, how about for yourself, your favorite thing about doing stand-up?
Yeah, I would say it's the same thing. Like they say laughter is the best medicine, and in the Indigenous community, like I'm not going to get into it obviously, but we have, like, it's a part of our culture. We have sacred clowns, something we don't put out there because for appropriation purposes, we don't. But, that is it. Like, laughter really is medicine. I know I didn't make that saying either, but that's the saying that I would say that I live by. Like, laughter is medicine. It could alleviate so much stress, or it alleviates darkness. That's the way I look at it. And if I hear people laughing in the audience, and if people were like, oh, that was so funny, or sometimes they'll say, you made my day, that just is the reason why.
For sure. Lena, Janelle, thanks so much for being with us. Congrats on everything. Going to be looking forward to that Winnipeg Comedy Festival show.
Thank you so much, Walalan and Chimagwich, and thank you so much for having Gotland and myself and Lena on. And Lena?
Miigwech, yeah. Miigwech, I want to say the same thing. Thank you for having us. It was a pleasure being here. And congratulations on Winnipeg Comedy Festival with Gotland.
Thank you. I'm so excited. I'm hosting the event, so it's going to even be more fun.
Awesome.
Amazing.
Thanks again, ladies.
Yay.
Bamapi.
Well, what a great interview that was, and thanks so much, Dennis, for filling in on that one. Again, Gotland will be at the Winnipeg Comedy Festival on Saturday, May 6th at the Gas Station Arts Centre. Tickets are still available at winnipegcomedyfestival.com, but I have a feeling those might go pretty quick, so you may want to jump on that. All right, let's go to social media now with our social media editor, Jesse Andrushko, to hear what some of you are saying about today's topic.
Thanks, Daryl. We asked our audience a couple questions online. First, we wanted to know how social media has affected the way Indigenous people share and express their humor. First from Shirley. Laughter is our #1 healing medicine from my childhood days. Still is. Janelle said, I share by being my authentic self, eccentric and total kook. A fellow comic told me humor is our unofficial ain't sacred teaching. It's good medicine. From Brian. I think it has brought people together that otherwise would never talk or hear each other's opinions. Great answers. We also asked online, how do you think humor plays a role in Indigenous storytelling and traditions? We got some good answers. From Margaret, my dad was great at storytelling, legends, old ways, and teaching. He only spoke in the language. I remember the laughter. Brian said, as in creation, everything is of balance. Lastly, from Matthew, we retain more knowledge in a funny and positive environment, and laughter is one of our best medicines. It promotes healings. It's why we never truly lost ourselves completely to this colonial nightmare. But they did introduce us to fry bread, and that is consolation enough. Thank you all for sharing. If you want to add your opinion, here's how. Join our conversation now. Like us on Facebook on our APTN News page. Follow or tweet us at APTN InFocus. And send your thoughts to infocus@aptn.ca.
All right, thanks so much, Jesse. We need to pause the show one more time here. We do still have a couple more interviews coming up, though, so stick around. Welcome back to APTN in Focus. Our next guest this afternoon is comedian Chad Anderson. Chad, thanks so much for being here. It's always a pleasure to have somebody in studio, and we'll start easy. We're talking about Indigenous comedy. What got you started in comedy, or maybe how did you get started in comedy?
I always was a class clown, for sure. And I always just loved making people laugh, loved attention. Discovered pretty early on the easiest way to get attention was to be funny. So yeah, I was always performing for my family, doing crazy stuff. And when I moved to Winnipeg 15 years ago, I guess, 2008, I just was bored at home one day and Googled, how do you do stand-up comedy? And came up was write 5 minutes material, call your local club, ask about amateur night, and get booked for that. And so I did those steps, and yeah, it's been doing it ever since.
So do you remember that first time you had stepped on stage and you know, that sort of your first time for everything?
Yeah, it was, I was so nervous that first time for sure. It was at Rumors Comedy Club here in Winnipeg, right. And I got two friends, they drove me there, and we got to the top of the stairs to go down into the basement, and I sat down and I was like, I don't think I can do it. And my buddies were like, no, we drove you here. You're going
You're going, yeah.
So we went in, and yeah, I don't remember the first set. I don't remember the jokes that I told, but I just remember the feeling of like being so nervous, and then once my first joke hit and people laughed, of just like feeling a calm and like, it sounds so cheesy and cliche, but it was like a moment of like, oh, this is it.
Yeah.
This is what I want to do for the rest of my life, is make people laugh on stage. And yeah, my friends who came, they were like, dude, you were shaking, like visibly shaking until the crowd laughed, and then you just looked confident. And I was like, oh, sweet. So yeah.
Well, so there's one of the things with your comedy I know that you touch on is some of the stuff like racism and sort of some of the more serious stuff, but in comedy form. So there's so many issues faced by Indigenous people, and like I said, you talk about things like racism. So how does comedy help sort of discuss these issues and bring these issues to light?
I think for me, look, I know people don't like to talk about these issues, you know, and so I think for me, it's not even so much that I'm trying to bring light or get discussions happening. It's just, you know, I talk about my own personal experiences with those topics in my act for the most part. So for me, it's just my way of dealing with it, you know, and I think what I've learned over my years of doing comedy and trying to connect, because a little backstory, I guess, is my dad was adopted right from the reserve when he was a baby, raised by a white family, literally across the river in the Paw, and OCN's on the other side. Like grew up playing hockey and baseball against his brothers, didn't know that they were his brothers type thing. And when I was 6, they reconnected, and so but I didn't grow up with culture, didn't grow up on the reserve, right? So for me, trying to reconnect is part of my journey in stand-up now too. And so when I'm talking about these issues, it's my way of like being okay, you know. What I've come to learn from getting the opportunity to travel to different reserves in Canada and hang out with different Indigenous people is, one thing I notice is we don't take things seriously. I mean, we take things seriously, but humor is a big part of the culture across Turtle Island, right? Everyone is not like always like down and out and mad. We're laughing about these things. So I think for me, when someone's racist to me and I initially get mad, I think about it after. I'm like, well, that was stupid, right? Why am I so mad at this person's ignorance? Where's the joke in this? And then I write a joke about it, right? And I think that does get people thinking in a way, which is not my intended purpose. It's just for my own therapy, I guess. But to get people thinking and like, oh yeah, racism is dumb, right? It is just people being ignorant. They don't know the facts. So yeah.
Well, speaking of jokes, I mean, there's many Indigenous comedians, and I believe there's an Indigenous comedy tour got land, right? So that's kind of a far cry from when it was a few years ago. And we were talking a little bit off camera about that. But how significant is it that there are so many Indigenous comedians and there's a place for Indigenous people on the comedy scene?
It's amazing to see. Yeah, I've been in stand-up comedy for 15 years now, and it's just like, for the longest time it was like Don Bernstick, Howie Miller, Paul Rablowskis, Florence Spence, myself. Like there was just Craig Lozon. There's only a handful of Native comics, and now in this like last 2 years, it's just this explosion of like content creators, you know, TikTok comedians and stand-up comedians, and it's amazing to see. And for me, it also makes me want to just step my game up, right?
Yeah.
You
got some competition.
Yeah, exactly. And it's truly, it's great to see like Native comics getting national spotlight, like Paul Rablowskis getting a TV show and doing a sitcom about being on the reserve, but bringing that to a broad audience, you know, like not just Native people. So I think it's amazing, and it's great to see that it's happening now. Yeah.
Well, so what's your favorite part of comedy? Like, what sort of hooked you right away from, you said you always liked attention and stuff, but what's your favorite part of doing stand-up and doing comedy?
I think it's traveling, it's meeting new people, you know, it's going to different cities, different reserves, different small towns, you know, and just seeing how people live and figuring out what makes people laugh, you know, and it's nerve-wracking going to somewhere you haven't been before, and like, are they going to like what I do, you know? And then when they do, and then just having that skill set to be able to get on a stage and tell a joke, and maybe it doesn't go well, and you're like, okay, well, let me dig into the bag a little more and figure out what makes this particular crowd laugh. I think the work of it is what keeps me going and just wanting to get better at it, for sure. Well,
you mentioned the work a little bit. Can you explain your process? Like, I'm just curious how maybe do you sit down and, you know, write jokes for an hour, or how does your whole process work of doing a set?
I'm pretty laid back, yeah. Some comics, they like to, you know, they have a schedule where every day they sit down and they write. For me, it's just as it goes. I have my phone on me at all times. I have Apple Notes, so if something comes into my mind, I jot down that idea right away, and then I'll look at the notes a little bit later, and I'll try to figure out like where's the punchline, what's the setup, and then just go to an open mic and try it out, you know, and figure out how I'm going to word it to make it work. I used to sit down and write out word for word how I wanted to do every single set, every single joke, and I just felt like it was really robotic, and it didn't leave room for me to adjust if I had a heckler or if it wasn't going well, right? Because, like, well, I practiced the script for an hour in my room before I came here. What do I do now, right? So for me to just figure out the idea and where the punchline is, and then to figure out the rest on stage before I bring it to like a paid performance, then that leaves room. I'm more loose on stage, and I can adjust on the fly. Yeah.
Right. Well, you mentioned you've been sort of all over the place, so many different communities, and lots of traveling. So what do you have coming next? Like, what's next for you here in the next few weeks and months?
I got the Winnipeg Comedy Festival coming up in May, at the start of May. Don't know the exact dates. I probably should find out. But I'm doing a show called Laughing with the Stars. So what they've done is they've taken local TV personalities and radio personalities, and they're going to do stand-up, and then between each personality they have a local stand-up come up and do a set as well. And then comedy at the Cube, which is happening the first week of the festival on Tuesday and Wednesday at Old Market Square. And then in June 2nd, I'll be at the Parktown Hotel at Yuck Yucks for a headlining gig there in Saskatoon.
Headlining gig, right on, nice. Yeah. So just with that, how does all of that sort of work then? You sort of just work up to it, and like, do you have, like, you're going to Yuck Yucks, are you going to have like a different set? Like, do you try to change them up a bit?
I do, yeah. I have an album out that I released in 2018. That's on Spotify and all the streaming stuff. So yeah, I've been building with the pandemic, kind of put a halt to a lot of comedy careers for a while. So I've been building towards a new hour, a new album to release. But I'll sprinkle some of the old stuff in there just to, not to stretch out the routine, but just until I get. I think that's a process a lot of people use when they're working on a new album, is adding new jokes in and taking the old ones out until you have a totally new album to release, or special, or whatever. So yeah.
And before we let you go, I'll ask, I guess, a little bit of a more serious question, but where do you see comedy going, and specifically, Indigenous people within comedy? Where do you sort of see that going in the future?
Oh, that is a tough one. I think it's just going to continue to grow and get more and more widespread attention. I honestly, I don't like to, or I hate to like compare us to, but I look at black comedy and how it, like, in the late 80s, early 90s, just kind of like exploded with Def Comedy Jam and stuff like that. Yeah. And I think Indigenous comedy is like on that career path, right? We're on that way, on that road to being mainstream, to having non-Indigenous people wanting to know what we find funny, what's funny to us, and wanting to see us on TV and doing more of these live performances and having scripted TV shows about our lives. So I think that's where we're headed, to be honest. Yeah.
Well, that's a great path to be on, for sure. And just before we let you go, so you're at Winnipeg Comedy Festival in early May, is that?
Yeah, the first week of May, I believe, May 6th.
Perfect. Yeah. And then you're going to be at Yuck Yucks in June?
Yeah, June 2nd, Saskatoon, at the Parktown Hotel.
Okay, perfect. We'll make sure we get some people out there and watch you headline that gig. But Chad, we really appreciate you coming in. It's always great to speak with people. So we really appreciate it, and best of luck on everything going forward.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, from playing basketball in the Special Olympics to playing it on the big screen, a First Nations actor says his dreams came true when he was cast with Woody Harrelson for the movie Champions. The heartfelt basketball comedy was shot in Winnipeg and will be and has been released already. Tamara Pimentel has this story.
Where do you get this guy?
He just showed up one day.
Meet Tom Sinclair, a First Nations actor from Winnipeg who will soon be on the big screen in every major theater.
I am honored to represent the Aboriginal community on the big screen. Well, I have disabilities and everything, but that won't stop me to make my dreams come true.
The 26-year-old plays Blair in the film Champions. Directed by Bobby Farrelly and starring Woody Harrelson, Champions is a heartwarming story of a former minor league basketball coach who manages a team of disabled players. He soon realizes the team of friends can go farther than imagined. A truth for Sinclair, who was born with fetal alcohol spectrum disorders, Tourette syndrome, and obsessive compulsive disorder. He played basketball in the Special Olympics in his younger years, and in the film, Blair plays on the basketball team coached by Harrelson.
We need to be represented in a way that is appropriate for there's a lot of things out there that people with disabilities can't do this, can't do that, but we are like we normal people too.
And Tom Sinclair joined Dennis Ward earlier to talk about the movie and comedy.
Have you here with us? Thanks for doing the show.
Anytime. I'm very welcome to come on the show.
Well, we're very happy to have you. You were in the movie Champions, which was recently just released with Woody Harrelson. Can you tell us a bit about your experience on the film?
Just being a part of this amazing film is a dream come true. And working with a great director, Bobby Fairley, he's done a wonderful job on this amazing movie, and everyone should go see it, and at least once or more. It's just, it has a good heartfelt story to it, and it just has such a good meaning behind the movie, and people with disabilities should be proud of themselves to see themselves on the big screen.
Absolutely. Now, this wasn't just yourself involved in this project. Your whole family was involved.
Yes, my whole family was involved with the film, too. It was such a cool experience to have the whole family to be a part of this special project.
You've had quite the month or two as the release of this film has gone out. World premieres in the U.S. and Canada?
Yes. I've been to New York City. I've been to Boston. Did a premiere in Winnipeg here, too. Yeah, I've been just getting so much love and attention from the Aboriginal community.
Does it feel real to you at all now that you're getting a chance to catch your breath here?
Yeah, it feels, at first it felt kind of unreal when I got the role, and when they told me I got the part, I was like telling my dad, you need to pinch me to wake me up if this is a dream.
A good dream indeed, even better for real life. Are you hoping to work on more movies, more television? There's a lot of projects here in Winnipeg.
Yeah, I would be totally down to put myself out there, and I want to represent the Aboriginal community proudly, and I think there's so many projects out there and stories that need to be told, and I would be totally down to tell those stories and be a part of projects.
The Farrelly brothers obviously known for their comedy. Why is comedy something that's important to you?
Comedy is just so important because it makes everyone laugh and feel good. And sometimes you're feeling down. It's just good to have a good laugh.
What's been your favorite part so far of this whole experience?
My favorite part of being a part of this is just working with some amazing people behind the scenes and meeting and working with people with other disabilities like myself, and it's just been such a cool roller coaster.
I bet. As an Indigenous person with disabilities, why do you think it's important to have this representation out there?
Because to stop some stereotypes out there that disability people can't do this or that, but are we like everyone else? We can do anything. If we dream it, we can do it.
A good message for sure. Tom, what would be your message to those out there who think that they can't do something like this?
Keep on trying, and one day it will happen. And don't stop trying, and follow your dreams.
Woody and one of the Farrelly brothers, pretty big people to work with in your first project. Are other people out there you'd love to work with?
Jim Carrey, I would love to work with. Christopher Nolan. I would love to meet anyone, to work with anyone. I would be very happy to work with anyone.
Yeah, I'd probably do a Christopher Nolan film myself. Tom, it's a great story that you have, and congrats on all the success. Appreciate you taking some time for us here on the show.
Anytime.
Well, don't forget to check out Champions. That's featuring Tom Sinclair. And to help you plan your weekend, if you're ever in Winnipeg in the next few weeks, Chad Anderson will be at the Winnipeg Comedy Festival on Friday, May the 5th, along with Gotland, featuring Janelle Niles and many other great comedians. They will also be at the Winnipeg Comedy Festival on Saturday, May the 6th. Tickets are still available at winnipegcomedyfestival.com. And you can check out Stephanie Pangowish and the Deadly Aunties, who will be doing a fundraising show in Winnipeg on May the 20th. All right, that is all we have for you this afternoon on APTN in Focus. Hopefully you enjoyed today as much as we did. Today's episode will be available as a podcast. You can listen and subscribe on aptnnews.ca/podcasts, or you can find us on your favorite player. And if you missed any of our past episodes and you want to catch up, you can find them and more on aptnnews.ca/infocus. Thank you so much. Miigwech and Have a great rest of your day.